When you think of the word subwoofer, what first comes to mind? Big, bold, powerful, low frequencies, pressurization, bass. But just like anything that's large, like a lumbering, heavy-footed giant in a fairy tale, you wouldn't think speed described anything that's big, right? The RSL Speedwoofer 12S was wildly successful. Their claim to fame was that it was a 10-inch subwoofer with 12-inch bass due to its cabinet volume, woofer excursion, and power. All of those things combined improved its speed and transient response compared to others in its class. But that's yesterday's news. Well, yes, there is a new 10S Mark II that's fantastic, but later this spring in 2023, RSL is going to release the brand new Speedwoofer 12S. And we at Ecoustics got to get our hands on it early. So let's dive in. If you're already familiar with the Speedwoofer 10S, the first thing you'll notice is that the 12S is bigger. Much bigger. Pictures online don't really do it justice, since it's kind of hard to wrap your head around the fact that it's a 12-inch woofer up here, and yet you still have all this cabinet below. The measurements are 22¼ inches high, 19 inches wide, and 22 inches deep, weighing 80 pounds. I did make a separate unboxing video if you want to check that out, but I'm so glad it comes with two styles of furniture sliders to easily slide all 80 pounds into place instead of breaking your back by lifting. Lil Jon will be proud because this thing can get low. Rated at a frequency response of 250 Hz all the way down to a whopping 16 Hz and a 4 ohm nominal impedance. Regarding the woofer, it has an RSL proprietary die-cast aluminum frame with dual spider integration, premium grade dual stacked ceramic magnets, Kevlar reinforced paper cone with full anodized aluminum dust cap. Inside is an XDR series amplifier rated at 500 watts RMS and 1550 watts peak. And it even comes with its own remote control, which lets you turn the sub on and off, control the volume, mute the sub, and change DSP presets. A quick summary of these presets is as follows. Reference, which applies minimal EQ processing for a more natural response for the most ideal transient performance. Music, which applies a shelved response for extension, but with greater upper bass impact. Movies, which enhances the output between 25 and 35 Hz to augment low frequency content, even at low levels. And boundary, aka the neighbor-friendly setting, which reduces lower frequencies to limit rumble through walls so you can enjoy your 12S even in an apartment. Huh? The cabinet has a scratch and fingerprint resistant textured matte finish, which is such a nice feature if you hate fingerprint as much as I do. A front multi-segment LED display / indicator, which is helpful. But even better is that the display automatically sleeps after 10 seconds of inactivity. Another thing I find distracting are products or components that have a glaring light that's always on, especially in a dark, dedicated home theater setting. So I'm so happy that it goes to sleep so quickly. It has rear vented compression guide tuning with a turbulent-free slot port. The cabinet is made from 3/4 inch MDF panels with dado reinforced joints and corner bracing, and a removable cloth grille. On the rear, there is a power switch, gold-plated 5-way binding post for speaker level inputs, gold-plated RCA line level inputs, and RCA high-pass signal outputs, and a USB port for, you guessed it, an optional AR4 2.4 GHz wireless receiver to make this a wireless sub up to 35 feet away from your AVR. And of course we have our knobs here for volume, crossovers for high pass and low pass frequencies, and phase. Sure, that was a whole lot of numbers and measurements and features, but how does it sound, am I right? Well, I initially unboxed it in my living room and slid it into place in this corner here where I had put the previous subwoofer. But before I move on, let me just clue you in on what I like from a subwoofer. I like articulation for one, which is the ability to handle many different kinds of bass. Quick, tight bass like with pistol or gunshot blasts, low bass sweeps like during the intro of Blade Runner 2049, bombastic bass when loud music starts playing in a movie, and aggressive yet clean bass that rumbles my butt or my chest. And guess what? The Speedwoofer 12S does all of that and then some. There's also a word that comes to mind that this Speedwoofer 12S does that I hadn't experienced with the previous subwoofer in its place, and that word is pressurization. When we're in any room, it is pressurized. The air molecules are surrounding us at all times, and any sound wave that propagates through those air molecules is, at its scientific base, a disturbance of those air molecules. So anything we watched, whether that be a kid's show, my wife and I watching The Mandalorian, or finally getting into The Sandman on Netflix, playing Nintendo Switch games like Super Mario 3D World or Mario Kart 8, or me playing Zelda Breath of the Wild, I kept having these moments where I could, for the first time, feel the pressure of the room change because of the disturbances that the 12S was creating. But obviously, I mean that in a good way. And I don't even have it all the way up. In fact, it's a little below halfway on the gain knob. And yet there were times where we had just put the kids to bed and something happened in the show we were watching that made me think, oh wow, my kids are not gonna sleep through that. The depths it was reaching to pressurize my body, my chest, my head was wild to think about, mainly because it's an incredible bargain at only $799. As I stated previously, the popular 10S's claim to fame was that it was a 10-inch sub with 12-inch bass. This seems to do the same, being a 12-inch sub with 15-inch bass. It really is a testament to the cabinet's design being so large compared to the woofer size, so it's capable of reaching some insane depths without breaking a sweat. Okay, so that was the experience I had in my living room playing video games and streaming TV shows and movies. But because it did so well in that environment, of course I had to also test it in my dedicated theater with acoustic treatment, processing done with a preamp, with external amps powering the rest of my speakers, watching 4K Blu-rays to see how it handles uncompressed bit-perfect audio content rather than compressed streaming content like on Netflix. Honestly, I just wanted to see how it performed in the big leagues. How does it stack up against the Aperion Audio Bravus 12Ds or the SVS PB-1000 behind my listening position? So I hooked it up and had it just going solo, no other help from the other subwoofers in this room. I took it through my usual bass heavy tests like the intro to Blade Runner 2049, Godzilla King of the Monsters, the intro battle scene of Master and Commander, and the first battle scene of Hacksaw Ridge. And while it didn't live up to my usual setup, which would be totally unfair, of course, 3 subs against 1, I mean, come on. The 12S on its own, though, held its own. It got deep when it needed to, tight and aggressive when it needed to, and still shook the walls of my little testing theater when it needed to. Did it match having 3 subwoofers? Of course not. But since the 12S by itself pulled off the articulation that I desired, I would love to have 2, 3, or perhaps even 4 of these for ultimate pressurization of this room, which would be easier to pull off than not, considering it's only $799. That alone still blows my mind. But that goes to show it's not all about the size of the woofer. Is this cabinet huge? Yes. It's taller than most that I've come across and very deep, but since it is a bit narrow compared to the width and the height, it can squeeze into tighter spots than you think. Now, $799 just so happens to be the same price as the SVS PB-1000 Pro, but they both have their advantages. They both have the ability to become wireless, they both have 12-inch woofers, but here's where they differ. The PB-1000 Pro does have app support in which you can customize the EQ a bit if you need to cut or boost some frequency bands to work in your room a little bit better. But the Speedwoofer 12S has more power, 500 watts RMS versus 350 watts RMS, which I think gives it a snappier transient response than the PB-1000 Pro. I have heard complaints from some over the years that while the PB-1000 Pro is a great bargain, it can be a tad slow at times, given the content you're watching or music you might be listening to. So having that extra power with the 12S allows for that driver to move more quickly. It also dips down to 16 Hz versus 17 Hz with the PB-1000 Pro. Yeah, that's only a 1 Hz difference, but it's that larger cabinet volume, man. It makes a difference. And even though the 12S lacks EQ customization, it at least has the EQ presets to choose from. And that huge cabinet makes up for it. Because instead of relying on the room to assist in some of the bass response, again, that combination of cabinet volume, woofer excursion, and power, I think makes up for the lack of custom DSP settings. Because with the size of the cabinet as it is, it basically has its own room. And this might be a bit of a left turn, but as I mentioned previously, I do want to address the fact that it comes with two separate styles of furniture sliders. One set for hardwood or laminate flooring and one set for carpet. Given that most subwoofers are big and bulky, being able to slide it into place definitely helped my low back, not having to shove it back or walk it into place, you know? Just something I thought was a small gesture of kindness on RSL's part, which turned out to be a great help. So my final thoughts are that this is a very impressive subwoofer, given its articulation, power, and price point. The SVS PB-1000 Pro seemed to be the king of budget-friendly premium subwoofers when it debuted. But now, it definitely has competition in that price range. Could the Speedwoofer 12S be a bit too big for some? Yeah, maybe. You definitely need to make some room for it. But if you are thinking of getting this, it would be worth it to build your system around it, rather than find a subwoofer that fits in a space you might already have set aside. Because if you've been waiting to step up your bass game without breaking the bank, the Speedwoofer 12S does it all, plain and simple. Thank you for joining me on this review of the RSL Speedwoofer 12S. I had a blast with this thing, giggling like a kid again when I heard what it can do in my open concept living room. I mean, even certain impacts that happened when I was playing Super Mario 3D World with my kids took me by surprise, like, whoa, hey, okay, that was awesome. So I hope you get the same satisfaction as I did if you pick one up for yourself. Or two, or four, whatever. As always, to keep up on all things hi-fi and audio, computers, gadgets, and emerging tech, head over to ecoustics.com for a ton of information. And don't forget to follow us on social media for even more bite-sized content while on the go. Until next time, I'm Ealan Osborne signing off for ecoustics.com.